By the end of this test, you'll prove your knowledge and understanding on how date and text functions work. So this test is aimed at testing your practical skills on some of the ways how you can extract information and manipulate data to fulfill specific business requirements. Of course, we're going to be diving into the test right now, but before we do that, I just wanted to let you know that if you're not yet subscribed to this YouTube channel, please do, especially if you like this type of content, and if you're fired up to try this test with us here, hit that like button and leave any comment and just let us know what you think about this type of videos. Now, number one skill that you need to have every time you're given a test like this or a data set that looks like this, you need to first understand the data. Now, this is an inventory list. Basically, someone is maintaining an inventory list at their offices and they are keeping the part number of all the products, the part description of all the products that they have, the material themselves, the material code, the distributor name who sells these items to them, the distributor address, and also the unit price for each individual material, the units that are currently in stock, and the date of last order. So they're telling us that it is necessary to provide more meaningful labels for boxes of items in stock. The first tab of the shared workbook contains the inventory items, so we shall need to generate the information needed on the for printing tab. So the for printing tab that they are referring to is right here. So we shall use formulas or functions or text functions to generate this entire worksheet. Now, the number one question is, on the inventory tab, enter a formula in J1 that will return the current date but not time. So you have to navigate onto the inventory items worksheet in cell J1. So I'll scroll and locate cell J1 right here. So in this particular cell address J1, they are asking us to print today's date but not the time. We could come here and say 12th June 2023 because that is today's date. Hit enter key on the keyboard. Yes, this method will give us today's date in this cell, or I can just Control C. I can use a shortcut which is Control semicolon. This one will also produce today's date, but remember the question was we should use a formula. So if you punched it manually, you have failed this particular question. So what we need to use is the today function. So I'll just Control C and come back to cell J1 and say equals today, open brackets. So the today function does not require any arguments and it's pretty much dynamic. It updates every time you open this workbook. I close off the today function and hit enter key on the keyboard. Now we get the same results that we would have got if we had used a manual method. But of course, if you use a manual method for this particular question, you will have failed the question. You should be using the today function. All right. The next question is, in cell J4, calculate the number of days since the last order. And we are required to copy this formula and populate all the cells all the way through from J4 to J35. So I'll come back to the inventory items worksheet. What they are basically asking us to do is to calculate, input a formula here that tells us the number of days that have elapsed since we made this order for this particular item. And this is a very simple calculation. It's just today's date minus the date of last order. But what they are trying to test here is they are trying to test as to whether you know about cell referencing, because if you don't know about cell referencing, when you copy this formula down, you may get wrong values. I will show you just in a moment, but let us first write this particular formula. I'll say equals today's date minus the date of last order. I hit enter key on the keyboard and you can see I get 2,176 days. These are the number of days that have elapsed since we made our last order for this particular item. Now you might be asking yourself, how is this calculation able to work? Yet we are dealing with dates. Yes, Excel looks at dates as numbers, and I will demonstrate this in just a moment before we proceed. Now, if I came back to cell J1 and removed the date format, which I'll do, I come back to the number group of tools and put it into the journal format. This one removes the date format, and you can see I get this particular number returned. So these are the number of days that have elapsed since 1900, because Excel starts counting in its calendar format from 1st January 1900. If I actually came to this particular date and removed the date format and take it back to the journal format, you can see the number that is behind this date serial number. So what is happening is that we are getting this particular number and subtract the number that this date is giving us. So I'll just Control Z to go back to where we started. Let us drag this formula and see what happens. We shall assume that we don't know, or we are not aware of any appropriate cell referencing styles. So I'll drag and populate all the cells. And there you go. You can now see we are able to get errors somewhere simply because there is a referencing style that we need to apply. And by the way, if you'd like to go deep and understand everything that we are talking about here, things like cell referencing, absolute, relative, mixed referencing, you're free to join our free online classes. And what you need to do is to just leave a comment on this video and say, I'm interested, or you can just send us an email so that we can include you on these free classes. Now, how do we get rid of this particular error to make sure that we are able to get the correct value here, we are able to get the correct value for this item, and so on and so forth? What we shall do is, I'll just Control Z and come back to the first cell that has the formula. What we need to implement here is an absolute cell reference. As we copy this formula down, we do not want our today's date to change. So cell J1 should be completely locked. So that is what is called absolute cell referencing. So I'll come back to this particular cell and lock cell J1 by pressing F4 key on the keyboard. So that one will put the dollar symbols on both the column address and the row number. I hit Enter key on the keyboard. Now I am free to drag this formula to the rest of the cells. Wow. So if you are finding this interesting, please like the video. You can leave any comment on what you so far think about what we are doing. Now let us proceed to the next question. I'll come back to the instructions worksheet and move to the third question. So the third question says, in the for printing worksheet in cell A5, generate a part code using SKU, and then you add a hyphen followed by the material code. We add another hyphen, and then we also add a part number. So the end result should look similar to this, and we are required to copy the formula to the rest of the cells. So I'll head over to the for printing worksheet, and let us now create our part code. They've given us in the instructions all we need to create this particular part code. So I'll come over to this cell and start typing in our formula. I'll say equals, this time we shall use the CONCAT function, and the first argument is asking for the first text. So our first text, we need to introduce the SKU that I talked about. So I'll open quotes, SKU, hyphen, and then close quotes. The next text that we need to introduce that forms the part code is the material number. So I'll head over to the inventory items worksheet and scroll to the column that has the material code or the material number and point to this particular cell, comma, and our third argument will be a hyphen or a dash between the material code and the part number. So I'll say open quotes, hyphen, close quotes, comma, and now our first text will be our part number. I close the CONCAT function from here and hit Enter key on the keyboard. And as soon as I do that, you can see the part code created automatically, so I can drag this formula to the rest of the cells. Moving on to the fourth question, let's go back to the instructions worksheet and read through the instructions. In cell B5, we need to see the material in uppercase, and we are required to copy the formula to the rest of the cells. So I go back to the for printing worksheet. What they want us to do here is to come back to the inventory items worksheet, pick the material but convert this one into upper cases. So I'll come back here and say equals upper, open brackets, come back to the inventory items and click on cell C4. Close off the upper function from here, hit enter key on the keyboard. You can see this one gets returned and it has been converted into capital letters. So I can drag this formula to the rest of the cells. So if you're finding this one very easy, just let us know in the comment section what you think, and we shall be glad to hear from you. Now, let us proceed to the fifth question, and we shall be reading from the instructions worksheet. Now, they're saying in cell C5, we want to create a distributor code, which is the first 5 characters of the distributor name. So which function are we required to use in here? We are required to use the left function. So I'll come over to this cell and say equals left, come back to the inventory worksheet and click in this cell that has the distributor name, comma, and I'm required to only extract 5 characters. So I'll put a 5 in here and close my left function, hit enter key on the keyboard, and there you go. This one is our distributor code. So I can double click this fill handle to send the formula down. Okay, the next question says to avoid confusion, make a change to the formula in C5, the formula that we have just concluded, so that all the distributor codes show in lower cases. So this one seems to be very easy, but in case it's very hard for you, just let us know in the comment section. Now, what I need to do is to come back to this cell and wrap the left function into the lower function. Quite easy. And now I can close off the left from here. This will convert what the left function is delivering into lower text. I can now double click to send this formula down, and this one is now our distributor code. Let's now check the next question. I'll go back to the instructions worksheet. So the next question says many of the part descriptions are too long. So in cell D5, create a calculation to get the first 8 characters of the part description and then copy the formula down. That's not ideal, so we want to change it to get all the text to the left of the first comma, which function allows us to locate the position of the first comma. Now let's head over to the 4 printing worksheet and attempt this particular question. But before we do that, let's move to the inventory items and look at the part description. Essentially what they want us to do is to return all the text on the left of the first comma. So this one requires that we use a combination of 2 text functions, and that is the search or the find function as well as the left function. So I'll come here and say equals search. Let me just write the search first. What am I searching for? I'm searching for the first comma. So I'll put a comma and close quotes. I'll say comma, where am I searching this from? Within this particular text. And I can close off the search function from here and hit enter key on the keyboard. So this one tells us the position of the first comma in this particular text string. So we shall use this particular number as our second argument of the left function. So I need to come back to the formula, and at the beginning I open the left function. So the left function requires that you give it the text, which I'll do. I give it the part description, comma, and now the number of characters, the number of character argument will be delivered by the search. So I can close off the left function from here and hit enter key on the keyboard. And there you go. You can see now we are able to return everything at the left of the comma, but the comma is also getting returned. So we need something here. We need to come at the end of the search function and say -1 so that we can eliminate the comma getting returned. So I hit enter key on the keyboard, and there you go. You can see now we are able to extract only the text on the left of the first comma. So I can double click this formula and send it down. Just let us know in the comments if you found this one to be very easy. Now let us proceed to our last question. So the final question says the distributor address is in the format street address, postal code, and state. So in cell E5, you enter a calculation that will retrieve just the postcode from the distributor address. And in fact, we need to change the calculation in that cell to also include the state before the postal code. Now the end result should look like this. This is a little bit tricky, but just let us know in the comment section how you have managed to handle this, because remember, I shared this workbook before this particular class. So the way how I like to tackle this last question is I will come back to the inventory items and look at the distributor address. We need to start with extracting the mid 4 characters of this distributor address, because these 4 characters are the ones that have the postcode, and then later on we shall concatenate it with the extract from the right of only the 3 characters that has the state, and by doing that we shall have concluded this. So let us do this practically. I'll come here and say equals mid. I open the mid function. So we are interested in extracting from here. We shall be searching for the first comma. So I'll say search. We shall be searching for, I open quotes, for a comma, close quotes, comma. Where are we searching this from? From this particular text. We can close off the search function from here. We say comma, and the number of characters that we're interested in extracting are 4, because those are the characters that form the postcode. So I can close off the mid from here and hit enter key on the keyboard. Let us see what we get. The reason why we are at this point getting this returned is because when you check in the inventory items, immediately after the first comma, we have a space in there. So a space is also considered as a character. So to eliminate the first comma getting returned and the space, we shall come back to the formula, and immediately after the search, we shall say right here, I'll say +2, because we don't want to return the comma itself and we don't want to return that space. We have just used the comma to locate where we should start extracting from in the middle of that text string. So I close off the mid function from here, and immediately I do that, you can see the postcode getting extracted from here. Now what we need to do is to concatenate this with the 3 characters that form the state at the end of the text string. So I'll come back to the formula and open the concat function. So we shall be concatenating this entire thing with what the right function is going to deliver. So for the first argument, I'll open the right function. The text will still be our distributor address, and the number of characters that we need to extract from the right are only 3, because those are the characters that form the state. I close off the right function from here, comma, and the second text will be everything that is getting delivered by the mid function. Now at this point, we can hit enter key on the keyboard, accept the correction, and now we get our final result according to the instructions that we had right here. You can see it looks exactly like the same end result that we had in our last question. Now what I can do is to double click and send this formula down. In case you think that there is something that you feel we have done and you don't understand, feel free to watch the video that is showing on the screen right now, because that video takes you deep into all the text functions that you need to know to answer these particular questions.